He's the best amongst all active NASCAR Cup drivers at taking care of his equipment. He earned the nickname the Intimidator during his drive for a NASCAR Virtual Championship, and he'll be behind the wheel for the LeithCars.com number 66 Supra at the Charlotte ROVAL. Coming up next on 0 to 60 TV, NASCAR driver Timmy Hill. Well, Timmy, I want to welcome you to 0 to 60 TV by LeithCars.com. I see you're wearing our shirt, man. That's awesome. We've got our beautiful race car here. Thanks for having us out to your shop today, Hill Motorsports.
Well, thank you, Mark. Glad to be here. Glad to have the LeithCars.com Supra here with us as well, and looking forward to our race next week in Charlotte.
Yeah, I got to mention, before even talking about Charlotte and the ROVAL, and that's why we're here today at Hill Motorsports, which is just southwest of High Point. Timmy, you are not, just a driver anymore. Like you've been, this is your 10th year, but you, since last year, are a team owner. So yeah, this is your Hill Motorsports. So how has that been, juggling between being a driver and a team owner?
Sure, yeah, it's been difficult. It's been rewarding, but it's been very difficult. I'm thankful that MBM Motorsports, Carl Long, and that whole group, they allowed me to come in and drive the 66 car. For MBM Motorsports, and then actually they've been a very pivotal point and helpers in allowing me to progress in the racing industry and start my own truck team. Carl Long has always offered a helping hand whenever I needed it to, whether that be Carl lets me use a pit road box at the racetrack just because I haven't acquired that piece of the puzzle yet, and advice when advice is needed. And I appreciate Carl letting me, come in and grow in this racing industry.
And sometimes I guess you drive, sometimes you do act as the team owner or kind of monitoring the race. So when you're not driving, who is?
So I've been sharing the seat with my brother Tyler, who's been doing a great job. It's NASCAR is a very tough industry. There's only 40 vehicles on the track at one time. So to break into this industry is very difficult. So when I started my truck team, one thing I really wanted to do was get my brother involved. So when we started this thing up, I told him, I would love to have you drive some, but I want to drive some as well because I'm doing a heck of a lot of work. So we split the season up into about halves. I let him run about half the races. I'll run about the other half, and we really have a lot of fun with it. Tyler just came off a 17th place run at Las Vegas. He does a really good job. He's definitely learning, and it's a good way for him to have a no pressure environment. He's not coming into another team having to impress somebody. He's in our own family team. And we don't put that kind of pressure on him, and it allows him to kind of grow as a driver. So it's been fun involving him as well.
Now, Timmy, I mentioned at the top, the reason we're here today is that coming up Saturday, October 10th, and you'll be able to watch the ROVAL from Charlotte live on NBC TV, which that's pretty cool in its own right. 3:30 p.m. Is when the green flag drops. But talking about the ROVAL, and that is the road course plus an oval, so they take about, half of the Charlotte regular oval, and they break it up, and you drive on this crazy road course in the infield, but they also have some little chicanes and stuff around, parts of the regular oval and those turns. But this will be your third time driving for LeithCars.com at the ROVAL. We were with you at the inaugural event back in 2018, so you've got a couple under your belt in this race car, in the Xfinity Series, a couple with the Cup Series. Based on those previous experiences, what would you say is the greatest challenge to overcome at such a tough race?
The ROVAL at Charlotte is a challenging course because that racetrack's built as a high-banked 1.5 mile racetrack. So the challenging thing heading into that racetrack is how do you set the car up to, one, take the banking at high speeds, and then slow your car down in the infield during the slower portions on the flat racetrack. So it's already a challenging point to go into this racetrack. Once you get there, Charlotte has prepared, high curbs that these big heavy cars have to try to navigate. And I kind of mentioned it, but these cars are very heavy. So versus a sports car that most or a typical style road course car that you would see on a road course. These things are much heavier, hard to get slowed down. So when you come off the banking, going over 150 mile an hour, it's tough to get these things slowed down just because they're so heavy. It's just an incredible amount of brake pressure. So to navigate all that, to navigate these very aggressive drivers out there, avoid the crashes, it proves to be a very tough race.
And that infield too, well, you can tell me better than just me as an observer, it's not flat. There's some hills. So you actually, it's almost like a little roller coaster on that road course part in the infield, right?
Yeah, sure it is. I mean, there's we climb hills, we fall down hills. It's funny, Charlotte, is built on and right next to a landfill, so the ground there is not quite level, and the racetrack does change over time because of that. So it definitely, you see elevation changes there, and does add an extra element of a challenge.
All right, so the ROVAL is always super exciting. Charlotte does a great job. It'll be a little bit different, this year with limited number of fans and no one in the infield or pit row except you guys, and we all know why that is. But speaking of the challenges, and I mentioned this earlier too, that NASCAR.com surveyed cut drivers, but also just looking at the statistics, you are ranked as the best driver at taking care of your race car. So what does that mean for Timmy Hill during a race? How do you do that?
So it's nice to get recognized for stuff like that, because I think what happens is a lot of the drivers, they typically don't care about the race vehicles. For me, I've driven for a lot of teams that are doing all they can, really. These cars are very expensive, so to wreck one, it's a big hit in the pocketbooks for a lot of these team owners. So I've always taken that to heart. So when I'm out there in the racetrack, I'm really constantly watching what I'm doing, but on top of that, I'm really visualizing what's going on around me. So if I see some other guys are doing something, that I think it's probably not the smartest move out there, I really try to avoid that. So I'm very good at, when accidents start to happen, realizing what direction they're going to go, watching their wheels, whether they're going to lock their brakes up. Some drivers, they freeze up and they don't, and in that case, it's probably the worst situation that you could happen, because when a car is just free rolling, wrecking, they're hard to miss. So I try to keep an eye out for all that, and that's really reflective of my years. I've really rarely ever tear a car up, and if it is, it's kind of a fluke deal. So it's really kept me in the sport for a lot of these teams. They're grateful to have me in their cars just because I don't tear them up. But on top of that, it gets us to the finish, and ultimately that give you a better finish for the each race at the end of the year. And
again, with this year being just so off in a lot of ways, and it's been a challenge for everyone, and there have been some nice surprises. And one of those, I think you would have to agree, was the virtual, the NASCAR through iRacing. The NASCAR and Fox TV got together and actually put you guys on network TV back in the end of March and through April, early May, racing on these virtual racetracks against your fellow Cup drivers. Tell us how the name Intimidator, your nickname, came out of that. How did that happen?
So it was kind of unexpected, and really the whole iRacing being televised was unexpected. It was a neat experience that NASCAR iRacing, all the drivers come together and say, hey, let's put on this show for all these fans. So during the pandemic, when NASCAR wasn't at live tracks, we went online and did the online racing experience. And the third race in was at Texas Motor Speedway, virtual Texas. Mm-hmm. And I found myself in second place in the closing laps of that race. And I was lined up behind William Byron, who was leading the race at the time. And I had a decision to make where he had clipped the apron and checked up, and I had momentum. And I found myself, giving William a kind of a bumper, moved him out of the way, and ultimately I ended up winning that race. And I looked on my social media, different people were calling me the Intimidator, which is, I found really, really funny. And it kind of stuck, When we came back to real life racing, I found myself at different racetracks, and the camera will catch me on different things, where people say the Intimidator strikes again, So it's been a fun name, and it kind of goes with obviously my real life name, so it's been fun.
And then you were able to celebrate because it wasn't just that virtual win you got at Texas Motor Speedway, but you finished so high consistently every week. And I guess no doubt because you're such a great, iRacer, because you practice on that, right? What did you end up accomplishing at the end of that?
Yeah, so I think all but one finish, I finished in the top 3, which is kind of unheard of, because we're all out there and there's a lot of wrecks, and to finish top 3 practically every race, except for one, was an achievement. So we ended up winning the championship in that. I was a top driver at the end of the deal. Before we came back racing in the real world. And, it was very neat, to achieve that. And then, when I won Texas virtually, we did a press conference, and then Eddie Gossage, the track president for Texas, reached out and said, hey, whenever we come back racing and you come visit Texas, be sure to give me a call because we got a cowboy hat waiting for you. So for those who don't know, when you win Texas, you get a cowboy hat that the winner gets. And so surely enough, a few months later, we go back down to Texas for the real life race, and they bring me over to Victory Lane. I get my own cowboy hat that they have in Victory Lane, and it was just a really neat experience.
Yeah, that was awesome. And we can't thank you enough for what you did for LeithCars.com and our local short tracks who, of course, again, this season we're not able to open. One was able to open on a very limited, fan attendance schedule, but talking about Wake County Speedway and Southern National Motorsports Park, and right after the NASCAR series on Fox, we thought, well, hey, let's try to put together an iRacing series that LeithCars.com could sponsor and invite the local stock car racers that would normally race at those tracks if they had been open this year, and to help kick that off. You agreed to be in that inaugural race. So, how was that racing against the grassroots guys?
So that was a lot of fun. We ran Southern National, and that track I've ran there a couple times growing up, so I was familiar with it, and it's a really fun short track, grassroots track for sure. And I got out there with that group of guys, and they're comical, but they're definitely they're invested in this thing. They're emotionally invested. So. We got going, got partially through the race, and some of the guys are getting kind of thrashed on, some guys are getting crashed out, and I saw some tempers flaring out there. Then I think in the closing lap, somebody spun me, and
you did get spun out.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, so somebody got a good laugh about that, and
still finished 4th.
So that was a lot of fun, and to come out and kind of horse around with those guys, and definitely it kind of gave me that grassroots racing like we did growing up. So It was a lot of fun.
So looking back over this year and talking about the challenges, but the good stuff too. For 2020, what has been your highest, best moment so far? But what's been like maybe a disappointment this year?
Yeah, I can almost answer that all in one weekend. Back in February, we had a mix of emotions. We went down to Daytona and with 2 great race cars, for the Cup car and for the Xfinity car. And Thursday night was the duels to make the Daytona 500, and we qualified in for the Daytona 500. So at that point, that's probably one of the highest moments of my career, because I had never attempted that race. I attempted it actually one time and missed. This was the first time I actually made that race. So to make the Daytona 500 as a kid, that's what you always want to do. And follow that up, and 2 days later we go racing Xfinity. And we're going through tech, and NASCAR found that our nose on our race car was deemed illegal, and they hit us with a very large fine and a big points penalty. So that was like, man, I can't believe that happened. And they had to cut the nose off a race car, hours before the race and put a new nose on. So at this point, we don't know if we got the nose on there as well as we would like, and it's just a big challenge, and I didn't know how this would affect the race car. So hours later, we get to the Xfinity race, and man, this race car is still plenty fast. And we ended up finishing 3rd in that race. So back on this roller coaster, we're back on the high, and that's how this racing industry is. It's just up and down, and just in that weekend alone, I think it had plenty of ups and plenty of downs.
So you can finish really high in the race, and you get credit for that. The NASCAR can also pull the sheet right out from under you too. Yeah,
so even though, of course that's the first race of the year, so in theory we finish that race, we should be 3rd in points.
Yeah.
And instead we're dead last, negative, 70 points or whatever it was, and it made it for a big challenge.
Just have to come back in 2021 and make up for that, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have you, like we mentioned, on Saturday, October 10th, 3:30 p.m. You'll be able to watch it live on NBC TV, and that is Timmy Hill in this car right here, the LeithCars.com number 66 Toyota Supra at the Charlotte ROVAL, the third running of the ROVAL. I guess you'll be racing both races that weekend.
I sure will be.
Right?
Yes, yeah. So I'll be
Cup and Xfinity.
Yep, doing Cup and Xfinity. Of course, we got LeithCars.com. The 66 Supra is going to be down there, and then on Sunday we'll be running the Cup car as well. So definitely going to be a big weekend.
All right. So besides 2020 of having some super highs and some disappointments, like is going to happen any year with the race season, how about getting a little closer to home with the Hill family? Besides being in our race car at Charlotte coming up, do you have any news you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, Mark, I do. We just announced a couple weeks ago that we are expecting. We're expecting our first child, and we're very excited about that. She is going to be due in March, and we got kind of joking about this. We couldn't be more excited. She's like, man, we could have planned this about a month earlier because it's going to be right when the race season is starting back up. So I'm already kind of looking at next year's schedule, trying to figure out my travel arrangements on how to possibly get home for some of these races. So we're very excited. We love kids. My wife, she's a school teacher, so she loves kids to the extreme, and really thankful and can't wait for this.
Well, Timmy, and if Lucy was here, I'd tell her too, so give her my best. But congratulations to you guys on your new soon-to-be arrival. And thank you again for being our driver third year in a row at the Charlotte ROVAL and this beautiful LeithCars.com Supra.
Thank you so much, Mark. Glad to do this with you, and can't wait for yet again another great race here coming up.
Thank you, Timmy, and thank you for watching 0 to 60 TV by LeithCars.com. If you want to learn more about Timmy Hill, go to our website, LeithCars.com, and check us out on YouTube and our social channels.